Srikant Singh. I'm a program manager on the same team. The APIs, the app-to-app communication APIs we'll be presenting today. We really hope that your users will be able to do more with your apps using those, when you use those APIs without you having to do a bunch of extra work. And we'll go through what we've got now and the new APIs we are adding and see how that works. And letting your users do more makes us feel happy, obviously, and hopefully will make the users feel happy as well. But most importantly, we hope that the APIs we'll be showing today make you happy. So without further ado, I want to spend some time looking at the existing app-to-app APIs we have on Windows Phone 8, also on Windows 8. The first set of APIs is file and URI associations. So you can associate your app with a file type so that your app comes up when a user tries to launch that file or another app tries to launch that file. You can also do URI associations, associate yourself with custom URIs to achieve the same effect. Now, what we've done here is that we've taken the concept of fallback URI that was available to Windows 8 apps and brought that to Windows Phone 8 apps, as Windows Phone 8.1 apps as well. By specifying a fallback URI, the caller of a file type association has the opportunity to provide a place where the user can be taken if the app associated with that file type or URI association isn't installed. So this is a nice way to let your user finish the task they started, even if the app isn't installed. So for example, and this is just an example, this isn't a real URI, but in this example, an app is trying to invoke the Facebook app to show a profile of another user. And if the app isn't installed, the user could potentially be taken to the facebook.com website to do the same thing. So that's file and URI associations, available on Windows, Windows Phone, still available on most other platforms. The first new API we're showing off today, new to the Windows Phone 8.1 platform, is the share contract. Now, if you've done any work at all with Windows 8 apps, you're probably familiar with the share contract. This is a great way for apps to share content with each other and has been available on Windows 8 since the start and is now available on Windows Phone 8.1 as well. Now, before we look at the share contract, I also want to point out that sharing isn't a new idea to Windows Phone. You've always been able to share pictures since Windows Phone 7. You've been able to share web pages, again, since Windows Phone 7. And when a user taps one of these share buttons, the screen they see is this guy. We call this guy the share picker. And as you can see, there's options to share to messaging, to mail, to OneNote. Tap and send is NFC. Now, this screenshot is off of an emulator, but if it was a real device and Bluetooth was turned on, you'd see Bluetooth in there as well. So there's a range of options, and it's all good. For store apps on Windows Phone 8, we have a couple of APIs, share link task and share status task, which allow apps to share a line of text or a link. So here's an example of the Bing News app sharing a news article, which is slightly outdated. Yes, there's an update. I'm sure that's not breaking news. And you get, eventually, when you click on that button, you get to a page like this, which allows the user to share the link to one of the built-in social networks we have on Windows Phone 8. So that would be Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Sina Weibo, which is quite popular in China. So I'm sure some of you have identified a problem. Some targets aren't available over on the other screen. Some targets aren't available over here. So here are the goals we set ourselves when we started to bring the share contract to Windows Phone. The first thing we wanted to do was make all targets available to anyone. Any app ought to be able to share to messaging, mail, OneNote, Bluetooth, NFC, Facebook, Twitter, what have you. And we wanted to take away the content limitations. We didn't want to say you can only share text or you can only share links. You should be able to share everything. So that was the first goal. The second goal was that we wanted these APIs all of the APIs I'll talk about today to work well on affordable devices. We're very proud of the fact that you can buy a $60 Lumia 520 or an HTC 8S and get a first-class Windows Phone experience on it. And we want that to stay true. The other thing we wanted to do was we wanted these APIs to be available on not just Windows runtime apps, but also for Windows Phone Silverlight apps. There's 250,000 Silverlight apps in the Windows Phone store right now, and we want everyone who has an app in there already be able to use this API. So I said we wanted to take away content limitations. So what can you share? Well, you can share text, you can share links, you can also share HTML, you can share files, any number, any type you want. But possibly the most powerful share formats of all is the custom one, which basically lets you share anything you want. Now, one important note here is that if you're sharing a custom format where you get to decide the name of the format and what goes into the format, you want to go out and evangelize the format so that there's at least somebody else signed up to receive the content you're sharing. And a way to do that is to use a format from schema.org. These guys have gone and done a bunch of work to come up with standardized XML formats that you can use to interchange information like persons, locations, organizations, orders. And it's useful to use one of those because it's easy for somebody else to go and implement a share target for one of those. OK, enough talk. I want to start showing you guys some code, and John's getting a little bit fidgety. So John, why don't you show us how to share content?
Sure. So just like you guys, I'm really excited to be a build. And I wanted to make sure that all of the memories that I generate here while I'm in San Francisco, I can look back on later. So I've set up a photo blog on Tumblr just to be able to post pictures to for myself and my friends. And I've also have a Windows Phone application which is able to get the photos off of that website and present them here. Now, what I want to be able to do is be able to take these pictures and also send them to other social networks that I have on my phone or via MMS messages to my wife back in Seattle. So let's go through kind of like how I would do that. So these are the pictures. You guys have probably seen, some of these. This guy has this big, huge office across the street from Moscone. Maybe I think he's in an airplane. I don't know anybody whose office is in an airplane, but.
I think that picture's from a commercial.
Maybe. Arun visited The Rock. They let him out. That's good. OK, so I can go ahead and click on these pictures. Here's our detail page. Shows the caption, shows the picture. And I have a little share button here, but presently it doesn't do anything. So let's dive into the app and write the code to actually make this app be able to project this content out. So I've got Visual Studio here. This is a universal app project that I've created. We'll get back to that in just a bit. So let me go ahead and open up the post detail page, which is the page that we were looking at. So you can see, this is pretty standard XAML. I'm not like a XAML master, so you'll have to forgive my poor design skills and animation and all that other fancy-dancy stuff. But we'll just do sharing for now. So here's my button. You go ahead and dive into the code. And to be able to get the share picker to be displayed to the user, I simply tell the Data Transfer Manager to show the sharing UI. Now, the Data Transfer Manager is the operating system component which brokers data from one application to another. You'll notice that here, I'm not actually specifying the application that I'm going to share content to. I'm simply saying that my application chooses to now share content, allow the user to select the target application which will receive the content. So also at this point, I haven't specified any content yet. Now, if you're familiar with Windows, you'll know that for sharing, I can go to the global charm and click the share button. And at that point, the share charm reaches into the application to retrieve the content. Now, since we want to be able to maximize the return on investment that developers have for their existing Windows Store apps, applications on Windows Phone behave the same way. One difference, though, is that Windows Phone does not have a global gesture to be able to bring up the share picker. So the application will have an affordance to allow the user to do that. OK, so now I need to set up the callbacks that will be called by the operating system when the operating system requires the data to be shared. So I'm going to go ahead up here into my onNavigated to. So this is the API that fires on my page when a user navigates into my page. And at that time, I want to set up for the data requested event. So this is the operating system saying, hey, there's data being requested, right? And I'm going to have an onDataRequested handler, which is then going to serve that content up to the operating system. Let me go ahead and write that also for you. So this is kind of the meat of being able to share data. So I'm just going to walk through real quickly like everything that we're doing here. So I'm getting the link of the image on the Tumblr blog. So this is the link to the actual image on Tumblr. I'm going to grab its extension so I can tell the platform what types of files I'm going to be sharing. That ensures that we match the correct targets with the data that you're going to be actually sharing from your application. And then I'm getting an instance of this data package object. So the data package is the unit of currency which we use between sharing from one application to another. This object allows me to put data into it, which is then taken out of my application and provided to the target. Now, in addition to the data that I'm going to actually share, I can also set metadata on what I'm sharing. For example, I can set the title of the package that I'm sharing, I can set a description, or I can set other properties. For example, here I'm also setting the file type. So once I've got all the metadata in the data package, then I'm going to actually provide the content that we're going to share. In this case, I'm going to share out two pieces of content. I'm going to share a link to the image so that applications that aren't set up to be able to receive an image can still receive at least a link to the image, which they can maybe post to a social network. In addition to that, I'm also going to share the actual image itself. So when the share operation happens, there's a UI affordance that we have in the platform to allow the user to realize that the application is preparing the data to go and share. While that affordance is happening, I'm going to download the image and provide it to the operating system. So that's what this callback here is doing. So I'm actually I'm returning a data package that then also the operating system will fire an event into the data package to go and retrieve the file that I'm trying to share.
So John, do we present any sort of UI when this happens?
Yeah, we have the application will be partially obscured, and we have a preparing share content message that is being displayed to the user.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we do that for you.
Yeah. As an application developer, the operating system provides that affordance for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is just simply the code to save the picture to the disk, and then set the file back out so that it can be shared to the other application. This is an asynchronous callback, so if you're familiar with WinRT, you've probably seen code that gets and sets deferrals. This is used to allow the operating system to know that your callback has completed, but I have a background thread which is still continuing the work initiated by that callback. So please wait until that deferral is completed before we continue with the operation. So that's what this get and complete deferral is all about. So let's go ahead and we can set a breakpoint here. Let's go ahead and get this up and running. Did I miss anything?
Yes, I think you did.
Really? Step through here, set the link. So this is the link that I'm sharing, if you guys can read that. It's HTTP, JPEG, all the way at the end. Go ahead and let that go. Preparing content to share, so you see that's the affordance from the operating system. And now this is the share picker. You want to talk about some of the
Yeah, so as you can see, we've
added
added icons to it. It looks a little bit different from the share picker I showed off in the slides. And this is the Windows Phone 8.1 share picker. You don't see a lot of targets because John's running this on an emulator, but on a real device, there's already a bunch of targets showing up. Now, what we've also gone and done is added a most recently used list on top of this. John, can you go ahead and share to messaging? And
Yeah.
so you can see that?
So
and
here's
go back
messaging.
and let's bring up the share picker again.
Oh, still have the debugger attached. Let that go.
Okay, so messaging just got added to the most recently used list. So anytime a user shares to a shared target, we add it to the most recently used list. The list is 6 items long. And the reason we do that is because we expect a lot of you to be writing shared targets yourself. And we want this list, and we hope this list will become longer and longer. But the user still gets a good experience because we keep the most recently used targets on top.
Yeah. So you'll notice also the messaging application chooses to show a lot of content from the data package. In addition to the image that the user gets a preview of, they include the link and as well as the title of the data package that I was sending. So this allows me as the application developer not only to share an image, but also to help pre-fill some of the data for the user that's going to be present in the like in the MMS message, for example.
Right. Another interesting thing to note here is that the messaging app chose to pick up everything we shared in the data package. It has the title, it has the picture, it has the web link. But that's a choice that's up to the share target. They can choose not to pick up all of that information. A share target could sign up for just a web link, and we'd still show it here because you're sharing some information that they're capable of receiving. So for instance, John, can you use OneNote as a share target?
Sure.
Okay, so OneNote creates a note, and it picks up the link. Oh, OneNote actually picks up everything. So I suspected that OneNote wouldn't receive everything, but that's fine. That's good.
They use the title as the title of your note.
Yes, yes. I suspected that they didn't use the title, but they do. That's good. So it is up to the share target. I guess you just have to believe me there. So the point there is that you want to share as many representations of your data as you have. So if your data can be expressed as text, share that. If your data can be expressed as a link, share that. Now, our data obviously cannot be expressed as text because it's a picture, but it can be expressed as a link and as a storage item of type JPEG. So we share those.
So do you think we should start talking about who else we can share content to?
Sure.
All right.
OK, so at this point in time, let's take a look at who you can share content to. So we've gone and worked with our internal partners as well as our external partners. We've worked with Facebook, we've worked with Twitter, we've worked with Bluetooth, NFC, messaging, OneNote, all of these guys to make sure that they all sign up for the share contract. So when you share some data, all of these guys show up. I can also announce today that Sina Weibo are also working on an app that will become a share target. And they're literally just waiting for us to open the Windows Phone 8.1 store so they can put a beta of their app up for people to use. So we'll keep working on this. We'll keep adding partners. The important thing to take away is that sharing data, sharing content is a good thing. Before we move off of the topic of sharing content, I do want to revisit a few best practices. The first one we already talked about. You want to share as many formats of your data as possible to maximize the chances that somebody the user wants to actually share with shows up on the other end. We've also added a couple of data format, a data format called application link. And what this lets you do is, in addition to a web link, which is an HTTP URL, you can share an app link that points back to your app. So if you've implemented a custom URI scheme or something of that sort, this is a really cheap way of going across platform. You could, for instance, Big News does this. It could share Big News :wack article ID, in addition to HTTP :wack, whatever URL points to the article. And provided the share target picks both of those up, and the users using the share target, say Facebook or another platform, they could tap on the Bing News link, and if Bing News is installed, they could end up back in the app. So it's a very easy way of going cross-platform. The last thing I want to point out is that when you share data, make sure that you've gone and implemented a suspending handler for your app, because you want to make sure that when we take the user away from your app and suspend your app, when they come back to your app, they still see the view they expected to see. So you want to really save your state. OK, so it's not all about sharing content. You can also sign up to be on the other side. So we'll look at that next.
Awesome. So we showed previously the share picker, and that had a list of some of the inbox applications that ship with every Windows phone. To get your application to also be included in that list, you need to declare to the operating system which formats of data that you allow as a share target. So the way that you declare this is via your application manifest. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Apex manifest right now. There's lots of information in here that controls how your application looks in terms of its tiles, its badges, what security capabilities your application has. There's also a declarations tab. This tab is used to control all of the integration points that your application will have with the operating system. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I've already added the share target to this application right now. So you see here it's already in the supported declarations. If it wasn't there already, you could pick it from the available declarations list. And we also need to state the content that we're going to share. So my application only wants to be able to share pictures, so what I've decided to sign up for is storage items, which is how we represent files in the system. And I've also listed some common extensions for pictures, like JPEG, PNG, and JPEG with an E.
So John,
yeah.
how would I sign up to receive all files if that's what I want? If I was OneDrive, say.
Yeah, if you want to be able to receive all types of files, obviously it's kind of untenable to list them all in this list, but there's a little checkbox here that allows you to say that you support all file types. So if you want to implement an application which can receive any type of file, maybe you're building something which uploads files to some safe on the web or something, then you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's the manifest, and that'll get your app showing in the share picker. Now we need to write the code to actually handle when the user clicks on your app in the share picker. So I'm going to go back over into the solution view, pull up my, my post page right over here. Okay, so here's our post XAML page. So this is just simply going to render all of the pictures that were shared to my application, allow the user to enter a caption for them, and then the user clicks the checkbox, and off they go.
So John, where do I say that I want to show the post page when a user taps on my share target?
Yeah, so for XAML-based applications, you handle it as part of your application launching. So that is in the AppX, or in the app XAML page. So this app XAML CS is basically, it's the code that executes like every time your application is launched or activated. So if we go over here to onActivated, now the XAML platform also provides a pretty convenient overload. So on my application object, I can just overload the virtual onShareTargetActivated method. This will be invoked by the operating system when you're being activated for share from the share picker. And I get the ShareTargetActivated event args. Now, this object carries as part of it a share operation. So the share operation contains the data that was shared from the source application, in addition to some APIs that, as a shared target, I can use to provide progress and status on that sharing operation. And you'll see here that I'm just doing a navigation to my post photo page. So when my app starts, instead of navigating to the main page, I'm going to navigate instead to my post photo page. And now my post photo page needs to be able to retrieve that content. So going back over to post photo, this is the code behind my post photo page here. So here's my navigation handler. This gets invoked when the page gets navigated to. I simply grab the share operation, and I set it, I instantiate my view model. If you're familiar with XAML, this is pretty boilerplate stuff. Set that as the data context for my page. And then if I have a share operation, I go ahead and I get the storage items out of it. So now in the case of my application here, I know that I only declared an intent to receive storage items. So I know that if my application has been activated for share, there is definitely 100% guaranteed storage items in the data package that I'm getting. Because the way that we render the share picker is we take the intersection of all of the data that's in the data package with the applications that have registered as targets for that data. So we ensure that only applications that have registered to be able to act on the content for that specific instance of a share operation are presented to the user. That way the user doesn't get any sort of weird dead ends, and your application knows that it can always do something when it was activated for share.
The important thing there is, though, that you don't have to register as a target for all of the stuff in the data package. Even if you've signed up for just one format in that data package, you will show up, which is why it's important to contains check the data package and see that the data formats you're expecting are in there.
That's right. So the data package itself has a contains method on it as well, which I can use. And I can pass a format ID. And we have format IDs defined for a lot of the common formats like storage files, web links, and such. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do this. And so then I get the files, and then I simply just add all of those files to my view model. When the user clicks click, they're going to tap it actually on a touch device. I'm going to go ahead and post those pictures to Tumblr. So I have shared code here that I can share between all of the versions of my application for the phone or the tablet. It'll go ahead and post that image up. And then I call this method on the share operation called report completed. This tells the operating system that the share operation is finished, and the application that was activated to handle the share operation can now be removed from the screen, and we can return the user back to the application that originated the share operation.
John, I notice you've got a cancel handler on there as well. What are you going to put in there?
Yeah, so the share operation has two methods. So we can cancel, or we can report an error, or we can complete.
Yeah, but cancel isn't really an error, though.
Yeah, so if I were to do a report error, then we display a toast to the user, and something ends up in the action center stating that, hey, a share operation that you previously tried to do failed. Here's why the application says that it failed. That would be kind of a bummer if the user just canceled.
Yep.
So instead, I'll tell you what, we'll just call report completed for cancellation as well.
Yeah, this is something that's important to note. When you call report completed, what you're telling the platform or the operating system is that the share transaction is done, that the user's done sharing. That doesn't necessarily mean that the share was successful. It's just that the user is done with the share target, and they could have canceled out, or they could have actually uploaded a file. So you really, really want to call this method to let us know to take the user back to the source application. Because remember, the user did not launch your application. They launched the other application that's sharing content. And the reason you came up is because that app chose to share something. So you're in effect a part of the user experience flow of the other application. So you really want to send the user back.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you guys one other nice little trick. Some of you maybe already know this. But normally when I click on this little debug button here, it's going to launch my application. In this case, I actually want to wait until I'm being launched to handle a share operation. So I can't just go ahead and click on that button. But what I can do instead is I can go over to the property page. In the build tab, there's this little checkbox. Do not launch, but debug my code when it starts. I'm going to go ahead and check that box. And when I hit the debugger button now, what's going to happen is the app is going to be redeployed. Build break.
Oh, John, async code.
Wah, 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 wah. OK. So now it's going to redeploy the application onto the phone with all of the updates. And you'll notice it didn't launch the application right away. Instead, the debugger has been set up to latch onto the application the moment its process gets started. So I'm going to go, let's see. How much do you remember about Tuesday night, Arun?
OK, I'm about to find out, aren't I?
Oh, I don't have any pictures in this one. We'll have to wait for another day.
OK, that's good.
How did you guys like that 930 that got demoed at the keynote? That was pretty awesome. Has a cool camera. But no camera is as good as the Windows Phone emulator camera. Color reproduction, sharpness, speed, frame rate. So there's some pictures. I'm going to go back over into photos.
Pictures are a bit monotonous. They all look the same.
Oh, well. So I'm going to share. And you'll notice now that our build application shows up because we said, hey, we want pictures. We'll go ahead and click on that. Uh-oh, the debugger didn't attach. Oh, I didn't set a breakpoint. Let's do that again. Where's my on-navigated to? There we go. Breakpoint. So let's see, I want the share operation. So I want to show you guys one other thing on this share operation. So you'll notice, it's a little hard to read. This says data package view. That's the type of object that I got via the share operation. So now when I was the source application putting data into the data package, I had a data package. When I'm the target, I have a data package view. So the data that you put into the data package is brokered via the operating system, and the target gets only a read-only copy of that data package. It's not allowed to modify, it's not allowed to inject data back into your application. So this ensures the integrity of your application and make sure that the content that you chose to share is really the only content that the target application is going to have access to from your app. So that's awesome. See, I get some files. And here's the storage file that the Photos application went and gave us. Got 5. Here's our photo. I can go ahead and give it a caption. Hello from Build. Go ahead and upload that. And go ahead and upload. Posting, 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 posting. Report completed. And the app went away, and I'm back in the Photos experience.
Awesome. So John's been, and so any bugs you find in the demo code, those are all John's fault because he's been messing around with the demo code this morning. John, what have you been working on? Do you want to show us that?
Yeah,
Is it done?
so I was really inspired by the keynote. And so as I've been writing all of the code here, we've been using a universal project, and it's also we're using the same code for a Windows desktop and tablet application. So let's see, I actually haven't run the desktop app yet, so we'll see if it works. Here we go.
Cross your fingers, everyone. This is what we call a high-risk demo.
Let's build it. Whatever, await method, it's fine. So just warnings. Let's go ahead and deploy it. Okay, so I guess like cross your fingers. So here we go. Here's the same app that I have on the phone, also running on my desktop. So let's click on it, take a picture. Holy moly, there it is. So one thing that's slightly different about this app is the UI affordances that we give to share targets are slightly different in the phone versus the desktop. So you'll notice on the desktop, the platform is responsible for like rendering the title of the application, some iconography for the application, and it also gives an affordance for the back button directly here. On the phone, we have an affordance for the back button as well. It's the back button, but a lot of users like to have a button that they can actually push on the screen as well. And this XAML page is slightly different also in that I have an app bar. Instead of having an app bar like I do on the phone to check it, I just have a separate button here. So the great thing about the universal solution template, though, is it makes it really easy for me to change just this one little detail about the application, while all the other assets just work awesome.
Cool. So you managed to share the view model as well as the Tumblr code?
Yeah, everything is there except for the XAML is slightly different on the two.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad that worked.
All right, that was receiving shared content. That's all fine, but who's sending the content? So on the other side, we've again gone and worked with all our partners. Internet Explorer and Photos will share what they have, the web pages and the photos and the videos, and yes, multiple videos as well. The other thing we did was that we went ahead and rewrote the share link task and share status task to make sure they tie into the share contract. Now, this number is a few months old, so don't quote me on it, but there's upwards of 40,000 apps in the Windows Phone store using share link task or share status task right now. Those apps will be available to you as share sources if you sign up for a web link or text. We've also got another API we have on Windows Phone 8 called Share Media Task, which allows an app to share one picture at a time. That also has been tied into the share contract, so if you sign up to receive a JPEG, for example, you will show up there. So there's many, many sources and more targets coming. Hopefully, some of them from you guys. I do have some best practices I want to go over when receiving shared content. We've talked about sending the users back already, so I won't stress on that too much. Just call report completed when it's appropriate. Make the interaction quick. Try not to stick a home button in your share target page, because then the user is in your app flow and things get confusing. Why am I looking at my Facebook timeline when I just started the Photos app? That sort of thing. Try not to do it. Don't go all Inception on us. Don't try to launch the share contract from within your share target. It won't work. It'll be a bad experience. Or other app-to-app APIs, file open pickers or launch a URL or something like that. Try to keep the user in your share target while they're doing the sharing, and then send them back when you're done. All right. The next set of app-to-app APIs that we're introducing to Windows Phone is the file and folder pickers. Right? What these APIs let you do is get a file from another app, or even the phone itself, or from an SD card or whatever, into your app. You don't have to add any capabilities to use this. You can just use these APIs. Now, again, getting files is a new. On Windows Phone 8, we brought in the photo chooser task, which allows an app to pick a picture from the local media library. This is an example of the Twitter app trying to update my profile picture, which I really, really should update, because that dates back to the Windows Phone 7 timeframe. But anyway, so the Twitter app does that. The Photos app comes up. The user is able to select one picture, and that goes back to the Twitter app. That's good. That's available now for Windows Phone app. That brings us to the goals for the picker APIs. Now, we wanted your apps to be able to get as many photos, as many files as you want from any source that you want. More importantly, we didn't want your apps to have to worry about where you're getting the files from. All you need to know is that I need a file of type .docx or .xlxx, or even star, right? And we'll make sure we go out and get that file for you. We present the UI to the user. The user is able to select a provider, OneDrive, phone, SD card, whatever, and then we get the file back to you. The third goal, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on this a little bit later, is we wanted these APIs to work well on affordable devices. Finally, we wanted these APIs to be available to Windows runtime apps as well as Windows Phone Silverlight apps. Like I said, lots of those apps, you will be able to use these APIs. So why do I keep harping about these affordable devices? What do I mean? So here's a very vague-looking pie chart of our sales. And the sales are broken down into low memory and high memory devices. By low memory devices, I mean devices that have 512 megabytes or half a gig of memory. So these are devices like the Lumia 520, the HTC 8S, that meet the min-bar memory requirements for a Windows Phone. And we provide a great experience on these devices. You should go and buy one and try it out. I've been carrying one for a year now. Awesome experience. Try not to hit the mic. Now, and the other piece of the pie is the high memory devices. Devices like the Lumia 1520, the Samsung RT, or the new Icon. These have like a gig of memory, sometimes 2 gigs of memory, sometimes even 3 gigabytes of memory. I'm not sure whether we have a 3 gigabyte phone yet. But we will soon, I hope. Anyway, so these are the two categories that we've split our sales up into. And as you can see, the slice of pie for low memory devices is large. So we do care that anybody who buys one of these devices has a great experience with Share, has a great experience with all of these APIs, and that you guys are able to provide that experience. So what's the problem? What's the problem that can possibly occur on a low memory device? So imagine a scenario where you're driving along, you've got music playing, you've got navigation going on. That would be the first graphic there. If you're wondering what the BSP stuff is, that's just the kernel and drivers. And so you've got all this stuff loaded into memory. And your co-passenger picks up the phone, starts up an app, say Facebook, and they want to post a photo. They choose to post the photo from OneDrive. At that point, it is possible that we might run out of memory. Now, we don't want to stop navigation. We don't want to stop the music playing, and we do not want whoever it is that's using the phone to be not successful, right? We want everybody to have a good experience. So here's how we solve that problem. What we do is, when something like that happens, we will terminate app one, but we'll keep enough information around so that OneDrive knows what it's coming up for picking files, presumably. And once OneDrive is done, once the user is done picking files on OneDrive, we reactivate app one, and we give it the pick files. So it's a bit roundabout, but it's not that different. And the user experience stays the same. And if we have the memory, obviously we won't be terminating your app. Now, what does that look like in terms of the API? You start out in your app trying to pick a file. Let's say the user chose the Photos app. The Photos app comes up. The user picks a photo. Your app gets reactivated, and you navigate back to the page where the user was before and handed the file. So it actually sounds a lot more complicated than it is. And to prove that, I'm going to have John show off how to pick a file. John?
Yeah, so the file picker and share both deal in terms of storage items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the existing page that I have previously built to allow content to be shared into my application. I'm going to change it to allow it to pull content from other apps. So to get to this, I went and added a button into the main page for my application to be able to navigate here. I'll go through the whole app, and you'll be able to see that. And I've also gone and added a button to this application. You can't see it in the designer right now, but you can see it in XAML right here. So here's a button which allows the user to click and launch the picker. So let's go ahead into that code and see what it looks like. Go ahead and just scroll all the way down here. So invoking the picker is pretty straightforward. I just need to new up an instance of the picker, specify the types of files that I'm interested in based on their extension, and then I tell the picker to begin rendering, right? Now my application will be put into the background, the picker comes up, the user is able to pick photos and confirm the selection, and then the result will be returned to my application via activation, as Arun previously mentioned. So activation, if you remember from when we did share, happens in my app XAML. So I'm going to go back over to that page. I'm going to just go ahead and scroll over here to my activated handler. So this is the generic onActivated handler for my application. And this is the operation that I'm going to perform to take the data that is being provided to my application via its activation handler and providing it back to the page that originally picked the content. So the activation is of type file open picker continuation event args, because we are continuing the file open picker operation that you previously started. And I'm just going to provide that into the page. And the page will then be able to go get the files out of the continuation object and present them to the user. So that's what this continue file open picker thing is doing. Let's go over here. There we go. So we just checked to see if there's any files, and if so, we go ahead and we add them to our view model. This is all exactly the same as what we did for share, you'll notice. Now, one other thing that I've done in this page, since we no longer have a share operation, I've also modified the code for when the user clicks the checkbox to just navigate them back out of the page. I'll go ahead and show you guys that as well. So this is the post photo. So you can see, since we don't have a share operation that we can complete in the file picker case, we'll just go back. Easy, 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 easy. Also, Arun mentioned that we want to make sure that users, if I'm launched for share, we don't have a bunch of other operations that we send them off on. So another thing that I've gone and done is I've just modified my view model to set a property that says, hey, if I'm launched for share, make sure that the picker doesn't show up.
So you're not going all Inception on me then?
No.
Okay.
No. And that's this right here. And then the visibility for that for the button element is just driven based off of this property here. Awesome. OK, so let's go ahead and take a look at the code running on the emulator. So you see all the content that we've been sharing earlier during this talk. This was the content that we had shared from the phone. This was the content that we shared from the laptop here. I'm going to go ahead and click this plus button. So this is the same post photo page, only now rendering the entry point to the file picker. Yeah, so you'll notice that we jumped immediately into the photo choosing experience. because I told the file picker that I was interested in pictures. So in order to make sure that that operation happens really seamlessly for users, if you request pictures, we'll take you right to the photo chooser experience. If you don't specify a picture extension, but you're looking for a doc or a TXT or file of your choice, what the user will be presented with is something which looks more like this. Now, this is a list of all of the applications on the system that have registered as picker providers. Now, on the emulator image, I only have one presently, and this is one that is pre-installed on the device. It is the phone picker. If we click on this, this is the file explorer for the phone. So you notice that the user has the ability to pick items from their documents folder, from their downloads folder, or from the SD card as well. So in this case, I have a couple pictures here. There's Arun looking sharp.
I do not know when that picture was taken, John.
Hey there, Share Bear. And yeah. So we could go ahead and upload that. I'm just going to cancel out for now. Yeah, so pretty straightforward.
So it really isn't as complicated as I made it out to be. The reason I gave you that whole spiel was because if you're familiar with the Windows 8 file picker APIs, this is somewhat different. And we wanted you to know why it is different. Now, who's providing files? I promise you that by the time this launches, OneDrive will show up, because I just had a meeting with them, and they're well on their way to implementing a file open picker. You saw SD card, photos, videos, one photo, multiple photos, multiple videos. You're able to not only pick files from these apps, you're also able to save files to them, which we didn't show up of, but the API is very, very similar. You're also able to pick folders. And if you desire to become a provider, come talk to me. The APIs are public. Anybody can go implement them, but we can help you with samples and stuff. OK, I've been talking about Windows Phone Silverlight apps throughout this talk. And if you've got one of those, how do you take advantage of all of these APIs that we've talked about today? Now, I want you to know that every single one of these APIs is available to Windows Phone Silverlight apps. We worked very hard to make that happen. All you have to do is update your app to be a Silverlight 8.1 app, which is the version of Silverlight that goes with Windows Phone 8.1. The sharing content API is the exact same. There are slight, and I stress on slight, differences in the way you receive shared content and the way you pick files, simply because the Silverlight application model is slightly different from the Jupyter one. And to prove that it really is slight, John will show it off.
Make me do all the work.
Hey, that's why I'm the program manager.
All right, so here's our Silverlight application and the same solution that I had with all my other Windows runtime applications. So now Silverlight applications get activated via an application launching event. So here's the AppXaml CS for our Silverlight application. You can go ahead and scroll down to application launching. So to be able to receive the content that is being shared to my application, all that I do is I simply take the launching event args. I check to see if they are a share launching event args, and if so, I can get the share operation off of them. And that share operation is the exact same share operation that a Windows runtime application would receive. So all the goodness that you could do with a Windows runtime application, you can do the same thing in your Silverlight application. And now what I'm doing here is I'm saving it in a member on my application object, so that later on, when Silverlight goes to do a navigation, I can inspect and see I'm being activated for share, and as part of my URI mapper, I can go ahead and redirect the user instead to the share target page. So I mean, if you've signed up for URI contracts or search extensions or any of the other kind of extensibility points in the operating system for Silverlight applications, this will be very familiar to you. Yeah, so that's share, and file pickers also you wanted me to show, right?
Yes.
All right, so file pickers is pretty straightforward as well. So for file pickers, the application is not getting launched, right? Launch is what happens when the user clicks on it from like the start screen or the app list or the share picker. In the case of a file picker, I was previously running, I invoked the picker, and the picker is returning to me. In that case, the activated event fires. And what we've done is for Activation events, which we want to be able to carry WinRT activation events, we've added this contract activated method to the application object. So I can go ahead and subscribe to that, and I can get the same activated event arg here that I would get in my Windows runtime application. And now since my application is being resumed, as part of the Silverlight framework, automatically things like my page stack get resumed, so I know I'm going to be returned back to the same page that initiated the file picker operation. So I don't need to do anything strange with the URI mapper.
OK, so that's literally it.
Yeah, that's pretty simple. So, I mean, one thing that we've been trying to convey here is that, I mean, we've gone from an application which just did nothing but like scrape pictures off of a Tumblr blog to now, like, that application can reach across the operating system, get files from other applications, can share content to other applications, it can get content shared to it from other applications. And we've been able to do that kind of over the course of just the hour here. So the question now becomes like, well, how easy is this to do with a real application?
Well, do you know anybody who's written Silverlight 8.1 apps?
Yes,
you do know.
We do have a couple. So let me show you guys. These are real applications that are using the sharing framework. This is my personal device. Hold on, let me make sure it gets connected to your. Hello. Yes, allow screen projection. OK, this is my personal device. So if I get a text message or something, it's not my fault. OK. So let's show off some of the other applications that have signed up for a share contract. So this is my photos library. I'm going to go ahead and select a couple of pictures here. So here's 5 pictures that I've picked. I'm going to click the share button. And so this is my device. So I have lots of things that I can share content to, including the Photoblog application. You'll notice Facebook and a beta of the Twitter application also show up here. I'll go ahead and share to Facebook. So Facebook is able to come up, render previews of all of the image. It's able to receive multiple images, and I can easily share from my Photos app to Facebook. And how long did it take the Facebook guys to integrate with share functionality?
Took them less than a day.
There you go.
Same for the Twitter guys. And they kind of did what John did here. Instead, they went the other way around. We already had a share target page that we repurposed to become the file open picker page. They had a page that was able to post photos by using the photo chooser task, and they repurposed that to become their share target page. So there really wasn't that much more work to do. And the other thing I want to point out is both Twitter and Facebook are Silverlight apps. They just became Silverlight 8.1 apps to incorporate the share target, but it was very straightforward for them. If you want to find out more about Silverlight 8.1 and specific differences that apply to it or how you work with it, there's a talk that I think already happened, but I'm sure there's a video on Channel 9 that's going to go up tomorrow. Go watch that. It's 2/5/17. OK, so I want to quickly wrap up because I want to leave some time for questions. This table kind of shows where we were and where we moved to. With Windows Phone 8, we had URI and file type associations. Practically everybody has that. But now, and we had some limited ability to share. Now, we've got the share contract. We've got file pickers on Windows and Windows Phone. For the most part, the APIs are the same, so you can leverage investments that you've made down there as well. If you'd like to see the source code for our demo, it's actually up as an app in the Blue Store, but unfortunately, until the devices become available, you won't be able to install it. But I'll tweet out the URL to the app as soon as devices become available. And tweet at me if you want access to the source code and see how you can build an app that leverages the same code for Windows Phone and Windows. That said, I wanted to show you a picture of the folks who were behind all this code. John and I didn't write all the code. There were other people involved. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring them all to the Moscone Center. From them, from us, I want to thank you for coming, and thank you for your time. Oh, and before you go, we've got this QR code up here. Feedback is good. Let us know if we were any good. Our Twitter handles are up here as well. Feel free to tweet at us. If you want ask a question, please come up to one of the mics. We've got some goodies to give out. So please ask questions.
Hi, Justin Angel. I was wondering about supported formats. So on Windows 8, you can send RTF, HTML, map reaches for the HTML. Totally crazy. Is that supported on Windows Phone 8?
Yes. If you want to send an RTF, you can on Windows Phone 8 as well. There's some slight differences. We're documenting them, but for the most part, what your code, in fact, we didn't even do samples for Windows Phone 8 share yet, because you can literally download the Windows sample, futz around with the XAML a little bit, and make it work on the phone. So,
Excellent. So it sounds like HTML is supported even though it wasn't a demo. Great. Another question, if I can.
okay.
What happened to file associations and custom protocols and all that stuff? Is it still going to work the same way it did? If I'm taking a Windows Phone 8 app, upgrading it to Windows Phone 8.1 Silverlight, is it still going to work the same way?
Yes, the file association and URI associations work the exact same for this. You don't have to make any changes.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I've got something for you up here. Well, no, nice headphones.
So I noticed when you used the file picker to try to find photos, it went straight to the Photos app.
Correct.
If there was another app installed on the device that was a source for photos, would there be a list that showed up instead, or would you still go straight to the Photos app?
If you've chosen an extension of type JPEG, PNG, and there's a list that we'll publish, we'll go straight to the Photos app. But the user is able to switch location. So there's a choose location button right there, and they're able to go to other apps to
Yeah,
pick
that's
photos
right.
as
There's
well.
also a mechanism by which an application could be an online gallery and provide photos into the inbox photo experience as well. Yeah.
That doesn't show up in the emulator, but on a device, you would actually see OneDrive and Facebook in there because they've gone and implemented that contract as well.
All right, thank you.
We've got a goodie for you as well.
If you ask a question, we have some swag. Go ahead.
Hey guys, my name's Lance McCarthy. My question is there a file size limit? I have some video apps that I would like to be able to share videos, and one of the restrictions in Windows Phone 8 was the
Yeah,
file
so when
size.
we share files via the share contract, we don't actually duplicate the data. So if the application already has the file present, like if it's in your video library, you get access to the data effectively instantaneously. Yeah, you
So
don't
you're
need to copy
literally
it.
getting a reference to the file that the source app has.
Yeah.
No
So it's really
limits.
fast.
No
Yeah.
limits.
Hi, when you try to
Okay.
share the, when you
Sorry.
try to share the app, what happens exactly? Like, you just said like you save the state. What all do you save like in the original application?
Well, we don't save the state. What will happen is that the on-suspending handler for your app will get invoked.
Okay.
And if you've written one, your state should be saved.
Yeah, it's one of the differences between the desktop platform and the phone is that on the phone, you'll notice the share picker and the target both completely obscure the source application, whereas on desktop, the source application is only partially obscured and not suspended. So since we suspend your application because you're no longer presenting in the foreground, your application should be prepared to handle lifecycle events like termination, just as if you were launching an app via, file association, and you wanted to make sure if the user hit the back button to go back to your application restored itself to where the user was originally.
So,
Yeah.
so any async calls going on would be dropped essentially. So it's basically gets suspended.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very similar to suspension. It's suspension and possible
It is
termination.
suspension.
Yes, it is suspension.
Hi. So it's my understanding that the shared target has to implement what to do with the shared data.
Yeah.
So we were having trouble with Windows 8 to auto-populate the 2 for the email client. Do you know if that's possible now, like to auto-populate in the email client, like the 2?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly find out for you.
Yeah, there's some emerging standards around. Some applications are so the property bag, the metadata about the data package,
Right.
you can specify any kind of custom fields that you want in there. There are some emerging standards around applications that are kind of agreeing like, hey, we'll put like the 2 and CC and stuff as properties in the data package. I don't have the exact details as to what people are using for those fields, but since the data package itself is very expressive, these standards are kind of emerging without us having to rev the operating system platform.
Right.
Okay,
So we can certainly, if it doesn't work, we can certainly reach out to the email team and
Yeah, that'd be
talk
nice.
to them about
So-
it. All right.
Should we do that side too, or?
Sure, yeah.
Oh.
Over here. Sorry, guys.
There was nobody there. I'm so sorry.
No problem. If I'm using an MVVM framework, is there any support for these kind of pickers or contracts, so I don't have to do all this code behind and event handling stuff? So
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed your question
I
exactly.
think I know. So, as you know, we don't have any MVVM frameworks that come out as part of the platform. But Laurent Pugnon was a part of the TAP, and I'm hoping he's thinking about this. But if he isn't, we'll try and put out code to
he has
help out.
Prism, or what's his framework? No.
It's MVVM Lite.
MVVM
MVVM
Lite,
Lite.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Go ahead, we'll go over here as well.
On Windows, there's a facility for taking screenshots of the app and then sharing that during the share process. Is there anything like that?
Yeah,
within
so the phone supports the ability to take a screenshot, which will get captured into the user's library.
Right.
So the user can capture the screenshot and share from the photos
Okay,
experience.
but programmatically, there's no way to.
Let me get back to you on if there's a way programmatically to take a screenshot from within your application. I'm actually not certain
Okay.
if there is.
Thanks.
Okay. I was curious because I implemented the share contract on Windows 8, and I'm sharing basically a JPEG as a storage file. And Xbox Music thinks that it can create a playlist with it. Is it a bug on my side or on Xbox
It can create a
Music?
what
A
with it?
playlist with it.
Oh, interesting.
Is that a bug on my side or is?
I don't see how, but
Okay.
let me know. Tweet at me or reach out to me, and we'll find out what's going on.
Okay, cool. And one more thing, I was curious, is there going to be support for more advanced sharing? Something like, I know there's no access to the desktop type applications like Microsoft Office, but now the Office is in the Windows Store style interface. Is there going to be things where I can send basically a WebDAV share? So like basically have a Word document that's located on a server and send the WebDAV URL to Office? Is that going to be possible?
We're working with all of these guys. We're talking to Office about how they'll implement share. Obviously, they haven't released their Windows 8 apps yet. They still have the desktop apps, but when they do, we'll try and get that opportunity in. I'll take a note of that, make sure
Okay.
something like that happens.
Okay, cool.
Is there any method for accessing the share from a desktop app, Windows 8 desktop?
Not at the moment, but that's something we're thinking about.
Thanks.
Will we be able to know what application we are coming from? I mean, if the user has to take a picture, when my app is restarting, will I know that the user used the picture application? Because
Oh, as the source, you mean?
yes.
You want to take that one?
Yeah, so the some of the inbox applications, you will not know who launched you, but for all of the third-party applications that come from the store, for which you can provide things like a link, what we try to do is ensure that when you get activated, you get some metadata about the application that launched you. And to the extent that that metadata is actionable, like it's an application that the user can acquire from the store, we provide that information to your application. In cases where that information is not actionable, like you can't go and get the Photos application from the store, we simply don't provide that information to your application. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Justin again. I wanted to follow up on Lance's question. So can I share through File Picker something from isolated storage?
Yes.
So that means that isolated storage is no longer isolated, right? Because you're actually sharing the file from isolated storage. Is that accurate?
No, if you've signed up to be a file open provider,
Right.
you can provide files from your isolated storage to other apps. We didn't look at a sample of that,
Yeah.
but we've got samples up. But you have to sign up for that contract.
Got it.
And even then, you choose what files to share from your isolated storage. Nobody can reach in and take files out of your isolated. We've been very careful about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Feel free to tweet at us any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.